All right, and we are back. Welcome into another episode of Chasing 1969, a New York Jets podcast. Today is Thursday, October 5th. Tying some loose ends up on the Chiefs-Jets game. Going to talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers and his rehabilitation from his ruptured Achilles, and we're going to preview the Nathaniel Hackett revenge game as the Jets travel to Denver to take on the Broncos this Sunday. Before I get to all that, before we bring Teddy on in, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_Chasing69, same as the YouTube channel. Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Spring Blake with 4 A's in there. Young Theodore, last week it was death, despair, the world is falling apart. Then the Jets lose by 3 to the Chiefs, and they don't look that terrible. And now we're sitting here just like, well, what now? How are you feeling? How are you processing things a month into this season for the Jets?
Yeah, definitely a roller coaster of emotions for sure. Um, it was funny because I can't remember if I said this on our post game show, but like waking up Monday morning, which I guess I couldn't have said it because we recorded on Sunday, but waking up Monday morning, I was literally like not that depressed or like sad about the game, because it was like, hey,
Right.
Zach Wilson just looked good. We had, things are at least sort of looking up after we thought like, hey, this could really just turn into a really ugly season. And it's funny to compare that to like the day after we beat the Bills week 1, and I woke up feeling just absolute despair about Aaron Rodgers. So, through the first quarter of the season, it's definitely been a wild and a roller coaster because we're sitting here 1-3. We've only got one win, so that's not looking great. But Zach Wilson shocked us all last week and kind of gave this team some life. And now we're going into a game against the Denver Broncos team, which should be a winnable game. So things are looking up. I'm feeling better than I have been the past couple weeks. But with all that said, you don't want to buy in too early because
Right.
it is still a little scary to, again, it's like, is this going to be how Zach Wilson and this offense is able to perform, or will we kind of regress back to what we've been looking like? We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think if anything, what I've learned through this first month, and this should always be the case because we can't overreact to anything, but it's just to take it 1 week at a time.
Yeah,
We were
certainly.
so high on how the season was going to go there in Rodgers, and then we didn't get the chance to see any of it. We got really down in the dumps the past 2 weeks. And then here we are, still with another loss, still moving to 1-3 on the season, but saying, not that bad. Not that
Yep.
bad.
Yep.
So let's start things off with a little bit of housekeeping. I think the biggest thing that we got was another appearance from Aaron Rodgers on the Pat McAfee show talking about his rehab. He was in the building, of course, Sunday night for the Jets game against the Chiefs. He surprised the team on Saturday at the team hotel, which I don't think like they called it a surprise. It was like there were rumors days before that Rodgers was going to show up, and then Rodgers was like, Saleh was the only one that knew. And it was like, cool, he surprised the team. I think everybody knew, but regardless, he was there in the owner's box watching the game, rooting on Zach Wilson. Goes on the Pat McAfee show, talks about his Achilles rehab, says he's well ahead on his timeline. Full quote here: "There's nothing normal about how I'm attacking this rehab. Again, this is just my mindset. I believe in the power of intention. This is my full-time job at rehab. My entire focus is to do things that haven't been done before. The biggest takeaway from that is, the common practice is to wear a walking boot for about 6 weeks after your Achilles procedure, and he was wearing shoes in 13 days. That's a big time difference. And then, to continue on with him potentially returning this season, quote, for the peace of mind, I think you have to have some sort of long-term goal like that. Otherwise, rehab becomes more laborious and monotonous. Let's attack this rehab as hard as I can and see where." I said that funny. Where we can,
Laborious.
yeah. Let's attack this rehab as hard as we can and see where we're at in a couple of months. Obviously, I'd like us to be alive and winning, and for that to even be in the conversation. I don't think it hurts at all to put that into the manifestation. So I get what he's saying. To be doing all this rehab and to be aggressively treating it like a full-time job, as he says he is, you want to have some sort of like tangible goal that's in front of you. And the ultimate goal for him, obviously we know he wants to come back and play next year. And I wouldn't even question that at this point. Aaron Rodgers will be playing quarterback for the Jets next season. But to me, the big goal of like, let's get back on the field. Let's get this chance where like end of the season, the Jets are in the wild card spot, maybe wild card round weekend, we can get there. At the same time, we have to be patient and understand that that is something that's never really been done before. So where do you stand between allowing yourself a little bit of hope? Is there a certain timeline, like we get to mid-November and you give yourself hope? Like, where do you sit with Rodgers potentially coming back, which is something that's never been done before in the history of not even just the NFL, professional sports?
Yeah, I don't know if my take will really be like the common one among Jets fans, but to me, like this is all fun and good, but I'm really just like not paying much attention to it until it starts to get real, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you kind of just said, like if we're into mid-November, early December, and things are like, hey, maybe this guy can come back for a couple weeks at the end of the year, and like if we have a chance to make the playoffs and do all that, like then I'll buy in. But it all just still seems a little far-fetched to me,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest with you. And I understand, like Rodgers, he's very much like, give me the haters, like give me, and it's like, to me, I don't think doubting that he's going to rehab in like 3 months is like being a hater. I feel like it's just kind of like being a bit skeptical and maybe, at least to this point, realistic. Maybe he'll prove us wrong. Um, I didn't watch his full appearance, but I did kind of see like clips of him talking about it in these quotes that you just read. I do think it's a little funny with Rodgers that he's like, yeah, classic. All these people are out there doubting me. He's like, I'll show them. I'm doing things differently, but he doesn't really like specify like because we did this to my ankle, I'll be able
Right.
to do this and this and this. So I said that to my brother, who's a big Pat McAfee, big Aaron Rodgers guy, and he was just kind of like, that's all just part of his mystique, and his mysteriousness. That's all fine to me, but like, I don't know, dude. It's like, how realistic really would it be? What month is it right now? It's October. He got hurt
Yeah.
the first week, so 2 months from
September
now would
11th.
be right. 3 months from the surgery would be December 11th, which is already into like week whatever 14, 15. So I don't know. I don't put much into this. Not that I'm saying it won't happen, but I'm just gonna kind of let it sit, and then we'll see where we're at in a few months.
To me, I think some of the mystique goes about what they actually necessarily did with the procedure. And to be when Peyton Manning went through his really bad neck procedure, he just disappeared into Europe for a little bit and then just came back. And the next season was like MVP of the league, like was just lighting things up in Denver. Um, there's been talk about a lot of soccer stars, the longevity of their careers over in Europe, the procedures that they're doing over there. Apparently, they're far more advanced in repairing torn ligaments and just legs in general over there. So I don't know if Rodgers got some work done overseas that we'll hear about, a year from now, but Kobe Bryant did the same thing. He went over to Germany. I know Germany is where Manning went as well too. So maybe Aaron Rodgers just hopped on a plane, went across seas, and had something done in addition to the whatever happened here as well too. So maybe there's a little bit of mystique where it's just like he doesn't maybe want to dive too much into that, but
For
could be
sure.
something that I've thought about.
Yeah, and I do think like I don't at all doubt that there have been improvements in all these things because we've seen it. Like we saw Cam Akers come
Dude,
back
ACL
after
used
five
to
and a half
be
months.
ACL used to be like your career was done like
Right,
20,
right.
30 years ago. It's like, oh,
And
you're
now
done.
it's not. Yeah, exactly. And these advancements do happen even in the more near past. Like people have been coming back from Achilles injuries quicker and kind of surprising. And like that's all fine. Even Brees Hall is like he had his ACL, MCL, whatever, and he's back pretty quick. When a lot of people might have taken a full year plus to start playing again and get back on the field. So I'm not doubting that like there has been improvements and maybe he has this like new surgery. To me, it is just kind of like I need to see it to believe it. So it's like, okay,
Yeah,
I
of
saw Cam
course.
Akers shock the world. That was crazy when he came back and started playing on a football field. And it's like, all right, so now if Rodgers has this even better procedure, it's like, all right, shock the world. But I don't know how much to buy in. Also, it's kind of like at the end of the day, we kind of need to focus on the Zach Wilson Jets for a while because we're not going to have Aaron Rodgers on our team.
So that's the biggest point. That's the reason that I'm not allowing myself anything is because if the Jets are walking into week 17 and they're 7-10, they're not putting Rodgers back out there. The Jets need to be in the playoffs for Aaron Rodgers to come back and play. So it is nice to say, like, if he, maybe there's a, we get to January and it's like, oh, if the Jets were in the playoffs, he would have been available and ready to play. Cool.
Right,
That means
right.
he's going to be perfectly ahead of schedule for 2024. But you're right. The main focus is here getting this done with this current Jets team to potentially give yourself an opportunity for Rodgers to return in January. Rodgers says he's rehabbing with J.K. Dobbins, which is pretty cool. Two guys that just, go down with brutal injuries. Dobbins recovering from a really bad one a couple years ago, and now has another season ending. So it's nice to have a little bit of camaraderie there. Did you take anything into account when he says you're supposed to be in a boot for 6 weeks and he was in his shoes in 13 days? Like, does that mean anything to you? Because, like, that's kind of crazy. That's insane.
No, yeah, it is. It is. And it's clearly showing us something. Again, it's just kind of like, they said the whole bridge thing, like instead of just a repair, they put a bridge in, which helps it. And like there's all these medical terms I don't really understand. So, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, sure, like Aaron Rodgers is rehabbing differently than anyone has before. He probably got a different procedure done than anyone has before. And, clearly like that's starting to work in these beginning stages. But at the end of the day, it's similar to me of like, when like it's June 1st and the guy coming off the ACL is like, oh, I'm going to be ready for week 1. And then you get to week 1 and that guy's like, actually, I'm going to be on the PUP
right.
and miss the first 4. Like those type of things happen all the time.
So often.
So at the end of the day, it's like and I think even Rodgers, like this second quote you have about returning this season, and he says, for this peace of mind, for peace of mind, I think you have to have a long-term goal like that.
Yeah.
Like, I think that kind of paints the picture of like, this isn't a hard and fast, like we were definitely going to achieve this, but obviously you want to be working towards something and that can act as motivation and all these things. But we're so early in this process and clearly whatever he's doing is new and not common and not as seen, so it's like, we really don't know anything.
Mm-hmm. The one last thing that I'll say too about the haters and stuff that he's calling out, all the doubters and whatnot, players look for anything, man. Did you see Tom Brady? He was at some conference. It might have been business related, but he's sitting in this chair and he's just talking about like how he would search for anger and motivation out of anything. They said that player said what, this coach said what. It's like these guys just look for anything. So I think he's probably just looking at the, the Trey Wingos of the world or these other guys out there that just love to just, throw their quiet little jabs. And, Rodgers has become a guy very much beloved since like Hard Knocks and since coming to the Jets, but before then definitely had his fair share of haters and still definitely does, just because of his personality. So I think he's probably just using that continuation of haters he's had over the last few years specifically, and maybe just using that as more fuel. Cause like, that's, when you're talking about long-term goals and like being able to not only do it for yourself, but to shut up a lot of people that have maybe just doubted you in the past. I watched his interview with on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is funny. And he talked about how this teacher in college told him that, he was never going to make it into the NFL one day after he got mistreated by a professor. And then he's just been like holding on to that for like 20 years since. And, it's just like those stories,
like every rapper.
You hold on to everything, man. You're using everything for motivation. So I'd love to see it, but you're right. The only thing that is going to make that even possible is this Jets team being a playoff football team and sitting at 1-3. They got a hell of a lot of work to do.
Definitely.
So moving into that, as we said, there was improvements in a loss this past week. And I think the biggest thing that we talked about even on Sunday, but we didn't have maybe the numbers or the breakdowns for it, was the changing of the guard. Ushering in some of the younger talent or newer free agent additions to the Jets and kind of doing away with some of the players that maybe got brought in some big contracts. This to me was like death to the 2021 free agent class for Joe Douglas here this past week. But, 3 big position groups, 2 on offense, 1 on defense, tight end room, edge room, and running back room. We saw a big flip in snap count percentages and look, it paved a huge way for their success against the Chiefs, despite still ending up in a loss. Is there any one of these three that you want to start with first? Any position group that I kind of just went with who I was thinking of off the top of my head, but is there one that's the most tantalizing to you?
Good question. I don't know. Is there one that's the most tantalizing to you? I feel like they all kind of are important. Um,
Definitely important. I think the one that stood out to me was the edge room the most. And I think the biggest takeaway from the edge room was Bryce Huff being on the field a lot more often. He had a season high 27 snaps last week. He coming off of 2 weeks of 18 and 16 snaps beforehand. And the flip side of that was a season low in snap count for Carl Lawson, who had 14. Now, he did miss the first week, and his snap count hasn't been high the last few weeks. It wasn't like he was dominating, most snaps on the edge. I think John Franklin Myers, just because of his positional versatility, is out there the most. Second is Jermaine Johnson. But Lawson was kind of that third guy mixing in there. But he gets his season lowest of 14 snaps. And you take a look at the gradings and the pass rush success. Have you ever listened that Chris Collinsworth, while I'm on it, because he was on that side, he can't say pass rush. He can't do it.
oh no,
He can't say it. So just pay
tongue
attention to that
twister.
Yeah, he can't say
Pass
pass.
rush, pass
He
rush,
goes
rush, rush.
pass rush. So Bryce Huff, so far this season out of the entire league has the 16th best edge grade by PFF, highest on the team by a decent margin as well too. Carl Lawson, meanwhile, has the 83rd best edge grade and the worst on the Jets team of all edge rushers. And his pass rush grade is the 11th worst of all edges in football. Now, this is a guy that we have been wanting more and more from since he, joined the Jets. He obviously misses the first season. Second year still didn't look too right. And here we are, a third season here now with Carl Lawson, where he's just not living up to the expectations. So, Bryce, I want to make this more positive about Bryce and his ascension, but we do have to talk about that. This was a pretty big, swing and miss, I guess, by the front office. You take a look at other guys in that free agent class. Trey Hendrickson was the other name that Jets fans were clamoring for. He goes to Cincinnati while we get Cincinnati's Carl Lawson. Trey Hendrickson's been one of the best edge guys over the last couple of years. So, especially in the pass rush game. So, let's get the negative with Carl Lawson out of the way first, then we can praise Bryce Huff. Where are you standing at with this guy now? And what do you think his role with this team really should be moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not what you want to see. And like you look at like his pass rush win rate and like things like that, and we talked about it a few weeks ago, but because I think his first game back, which was week 2, he had like 9 snaps and 0 wins or something like that, so he had a 0% win rate. And that's what he did, like when we brought him in. Like the big thing about Carl Lawson was he led the league in pass rush win rate, which doesn't necessarily mean he gets the sack, but it just means he beats his man, one-on-one off the ball, gets by him, whatever. So to see him underperform definitely is disappointing. I do think it was the right move to start kind of getting these other guys involved. Like Bryce Huff has clearly been, when you're watching on TV, you can tell like Bryce Huff has been the most effective pass rusher on the team. Like he wins most consistently. He does that. And Carl Lawson has just not been doing that, so it's disappointing. I understand people like pointing to free agent signings that Joe Douglas has had and being like, hey, none of these have really panned out. I do also think there's an aspect of like,
He got hurt
I
and
don't know,
wasn't the
like
same.
true.
Or
Well, yeah, like for Lawson, he's been dealing with injuries this whole time. You have to obviously look at it and say like this hasn't been the most successful of season, or of a signing. But I don't know. I do kind of think like we signed him 3 years ago. If the move is to say, hey, let's start putting Huff and Jermaine and Will McDonald, giving them more reps over Carl, then like so be it, I guess. Like I'm not like super bummed but obviously you want him to perform. But I don't expect him to be on the team next year, so I'm not like super worried about it as long as the defense keeps performing.
right, that's
Not
the
that, I
thing.
mean, the edge presence has been not as good as I want it to be. So him
Sure,
improving would be great. Not that it
huge.
wouldn't be, but it's like I don't think it's at the end all be all for this defense.
No, definitely not. And I think that was my main takeaway is like, if this is what it is, and next week to me is the big litmus test. Like, are we gonna see Bryce Huff out there more than Lawson again? Will we see, Ruckert out there more than Uzoma? Will we see Michael Carter take more away from Dalvin Cook? Those are the other ones that we're going to get into today. Next week, this Denver game is something we're going to preview it. It's like a must-win game. This is a very bad team that the Jets need to take advantage of and not fall to 1-4, because at 1-4 with a loss to Denver and New England, who look like two of the worst teams in football, we're going to be sitting here saying like, well, there's the season. So I just need to see another week of Bryce Huff out there more than Carl Lawson. And I think as we continue to go on, I want to see the young legs out there more. I want to see more Will McDonald. Their snap counts are around the same, but we're not seeing the impact that we wanted out of Carl Lawson. It's unfortunate the way that it's gone down. You're right. He will not be on the team next year unless he's taken, a big old cheap contract and is going to move to a reserve role here. But it is the frustrating part is looking at weeks 2 and 3 and seeing the level or the lack of impact for all of these position groups, and then seeing them flip it with like backs against the wall, Kansas City, and hey, look, it worked. So I guess that's maybe the frustration that comes with it. But everyone can notice on the field that Lawson doesn't have the impact that he did in Cincinnati, and we're starting to see a huge impact on some of these younger guys, specifically Bryce Huff.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, like you just said, like with all these groups that we're talking about here, and just in general how they ran like the offense, with Zach Wilson and all that, like the big theme from the Chiefs game was like, hey, a lot of these things that the fans and media were like, why are we still doing this? Let's make some adjustments. A lot of those adjustments were finally made in this Chiefs game, and now we have that test of like, okay, are we going to see what was working for us and continue to kind of dive into that, or are we going to
we have a standard for success. We know what success should look like for this Jets team currently. It's so funny because I was trying to pick on that free agent class. Free agency, if you're the team that's winning free agency, you're not really winning free agency.
Right.
Like just
They're
getting
free
the splash
agents
guys
for a reason.
Exactly. There's 53 spots on a team. If you have a talented guy that you want to keep in house, you can keep him in house. It's easy to manipulate the cap. It is easy to find room on a roster. So we loved, and Corey Davis provided us a little bit more value as well too, especially being a consistent guy last year. He obviously retires this past offseason, but Carl Lawson, we've talked about Lakin a bunch. We'll talk about Uzoma in just a second, but it's just like free agents become free agents for a reason.
Right. And it does show us like it is better to build your team through the draft. When you look at a guy like Rucker, who seems to be performing, when you look at, Bryce Huff and
Bryce
Will McDonald
Huff.
and Jermaine. Right. And that's the big thing with Bryce Huff before we move on is like he has continuously looked good on the field and performed well in his snaps for 3 years now. So it's one of those things where it's kind of just like, finally, like this guy should be rushing the quarterback way more than he was before. He has success. He's able, and like we were so excited about Carl Lawson, last year and coming into this year. We're so excited about Jermaine Johnson. We're so excited about Will McDonald, 2 first-round picks. It's like Bryce Huff has been the one who is producing, who has production on the field, so that shouldn't be ignored. Like he should be getting the nod because he's consistently been the best.
That was a story in like July or August that was like, are they going to have room for Bryce Huff? Do they need to trade him? I think we talked about it on this pod and leading up into training camp. And it's a damn good thing that they didn't, because like you said, he's become he needs to be out there more often than most in that edge room. And that's the story. I think, I can pick on Joe Douglas for, the free agent misses, but this is an undrafted free agent out of, where was he college wise? He went to, Memphis, Memphis edge rusher, undrafted free agent, been with the team since 2020, appeared in 14 games his rookie season, started 7 in 2021, went back to a bench guy last year. And now, is deserving of getting, just about the most snaps out of anybody in that edge room, even though they're going to rotate a bunch through and it's not going to be a super high amount. I mean, he was number 2 last week behind Jermaine Johnson. So, well, I guess John Franklin Myers as well, too, but you consider that he's playing inside outside. So it's a little bit different, but just give some love to Bryce Huff. It's an awesome story. There's a few guys on this defense. Quincy, we talked about him as well too a few weeks ago. Like a lot of great stories on this Jets defense outside of just the big names we all know and love. Let's move to the tight end room next. Save running backs for last. Huge change here, really, with the tight end 2 role. Tyler Conklin led the way with 40 snaps this past week, but Rucker outsnapped Uzomah 25-21. And kind of like we were saying with Bryce Huff, who had a low snap count the 2 weeks prior, Rucker was only on the field for 6 total snaps in weeks 2 and 3. Uzomah had 43 snaps in that period, so a total flip around. Rucker, of all tight ends in the league, has the 5th best run blocking grade and 10th best overall grade, both are which they're the best on the team right now. And, those numbers get a little bit inflated when you're not on the field as much. And for those few 2 weeks, weeks 2 and 3, is he the 5th best or is he the 10th best tight end in football right now? Probably not. You expect those numbers to even out as he gets more play. And Conklin is the best tight end on the team right now. But the big story here is his role expanding versus Uzomah. We've seen it all season when the team is running behind, in the opening few weeks, it was running behind Mackay, AVT, and Rucker. The rush success rate was through the roof. And Uzomah has had a highlight reel of really bad blocking, run blocking snaps. So, just another situation like we were saying with Bryce Huff and Carl Lawson. Yeah, we paid this guy to come in and be the leader of this tight end room, maybe not the highest ceiling, which goes to Conklin, but now we're starting to see them usher in who really has earned the right to be on the field more often.
Yeah. This one was really, really nice to see after the previous weeks and kind of seeing Uzomah get beat on run plays and stuff. I do kind of think, if you want to check the stats and bet me, but Uzomah did have a couple plays like where he like had receptions, which it is kind of funny that it's like finally he starts making some plays when you're not playing him as often.
He did. He in the passing game, he definitely did on in Kansas City.
But no, it's great to see Rucker. Obviously, Conklin balled as well. For me, the thing with Jeremy Rucker is like he's realistically not going to be this like big pass catching threat, but he is such an effective run blocker. And you've seen what he's been able to do. You look at how the grades look out and also just how he looks on the field. And you pair him getting more snaps with this kind of like new offensive line we've had the past 2 weeks with Dwayne Brown out, with Mackay at left tackle, AVT at right tackle, slide Joe Tippmann in there. Like the offensive line has definitely showed a nice improvement these past couple weeks. And, I think getting Ruckert out there probably has something to do with that, just more improved blocking. But this was a great one to see. You saw more runs to the right. You saw runs behind Jeremy Rucker. Like you saw runs to the left behind Mekhi Becton, who moved over there. Like the offensive line as a whole, and then specifically Jeremy Rucker, you can just see that it seems to have had this positive effect on the offense. So I was really, the last thing you want is coaches who are unwilling to make adjustments, which is what it felt like we were doing in the first 3 weeks. So to see this one, which was so egregiously clear, like how is Uzomah getting snaps over this guy when you look at what he does on the field compared to Rucker? So it definitely felt nice to see that. And hopefully they're like, hey, we were pretty successful. Let's keep doing this. So yeah, I mean, I think getting this running game going is going to be this next step, and I think that Rucker ends up being a big part of that. And if we can finally kind of like pair, hey, maybe we can actually throw the ball a little bit with let's have a dominant run game, led by Breece Hall. I think that's where you'll really see this offense start to flourish. So yeah.
And where there can still be a role for Uzomah. You can and they talked about this weeks leading up as well too. It's like, well, if you're not on the field that often, if you're not running that many snaps, it's hard to get guys on the field. The way that they ran that offense against Kansas City, where it was long sustained drives and successful ones, with that, we had, Mecole Hardman taking 6 snaps, or Xavier Gibson getting out there for 11 snaps. Randall Cobb still getting in the 20s. Uzoma, making a few couple of catches. Like, you could see everybody on the offense getting involved. Lazard gets a touchdown. So it's, the continuation of, like you said, it starts with that run game, because I think that's we've got talented receivers. The offensive line is doing well. Getting that run game going really is the final piece to really get this offense clicking in full. And we'll talk about that, snap distribution in just a few seconds. But you're right, it does start here, and being able to get all three involved. Conklin was a beast. He had a really good Sunday against Kansas City. Really, and it's tough. It's like, it's Zach Wilson's best game of his career. It's the best the Jets offense has looked in a very long time. So yeah, of course, everybody is going to look a little bit better with that. So just wanted to give him some recognition as well too. I don't know if you had anything specifically on Conklin.
No, I've always been a huge Conklin guy.
Yeah,
Even last year when him and Uzama came in, I felt like I was always like, oh, we're throwing Uzama. Like, let's get that ball to
right.
Conklin,
Get Conklin involved.
just because I think he's like an athletic guy who's able to kind of make plays after the catch. And is okay run blocking. And has cool hair. So I'm a big Conklin fan.
Nice. Good. Well, Teddy, let's finish things off then with the running back room.
Big news in the running back
Yeah,
room.
I know. Big day, big day. Last week specifically against Kansas City, it was pretty evenly distributed, but it was the first time that we saw Michael Carter out on the field more than Dalvin Cook. Breece Hall still led the way with 22 snaps. Carter was there with 18, and Cook finished with 15 snaps on the day. Now, this was a big switch that we've seen so far between the last two, because Dalvin accounted for 50% of snaps in week 1, but has gone down to 25% over the last couple of weeks, whereas Carter has gone up from 22% in week 1 to 30 in week 4. So you're just talking, marginal, just a changing of the guard here. On the year, Dalvin Cook is averaging 2.5 yards per carry and has a rushing success rate of 36.7, which is by far and away the lowest of his career. And it looks like it. He does not look like Dalvin Cook, and he had a little bit of a dip last year in Minnesota, has been banged up a couple of years. So all things considered, you're like, okay, maybe this is just, where a running back kind of tails off in their career, but still it does not look good, especially in the meanwhile, while Michael Carter is averaging 5.8 yards per carry, a success rate of 50, and then Breece Hall, 6.6 yards per carry, is most in the league for qualified starters. So a step in the right direction, getting Michael Carter out there more than Dalvin Cook. The big news is Robert Saleh says there is no more snap, count limitation for Breece Hall. So I think we'll start to see his numbers take up, and probably Dalvin's take a bigger hit more than Michael Carter's. Take me through your thoughts on the running back room between last week, knowing now what we know about Breece as well, too.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Hot button issue among Jets fans this week is Dalvin Cook. You look at his stats, you look at his production. It does kind of feel like, we're putting together these drives and then we give the ball to Dalvin Cook and, it's a 3 or less yard gain.
Or a 2-yard
there's
loss.
clips going viral. Right. There's clips going viral of, or not viral probably, but there's clips going around on Twitter that are, him not hitting the correct hole and trying to kind of cut and go right into a defender, all those type of things. So the idea that, hey, maybe we should start giving Michael Carter some more burn. You look at the yards per carry averages with Breece and Michael Carter, you compare that to Dalvin Cook, and that, that kind of like burst and, like electricity just isn't really there. Explosiveness is the word I'm looking for. Just wasn't really, it hasn't really been there with Dalvin Cook. For me, the big thing here is, it's time to like start treating Breece like the workhorse back,
Yep.
Because even now that he's off the pitch count, I do think before the season, the Jets are probably looking at this and say like, hey, even when we want Breece to be the lead guy, let's kind of make this a running back by committee. We'll have Dalvin Cook. We'll throw in Michael Carter every once in a while, and we'll be able to really keep things going. And as you look at what's actually happened, Dalvin Cook has just not been very explosive, and Breece has looked a lot better. Still struggled at times, but has looked a lot better. And you look at Breece's, attempts per game. in the Bills game, he has 10 attempts, has a couple big plays, has 127 yards, but then against the Cowboys, 4 for 9. Against the Patriots, 12 for 18. And this past week, 6 for 56. So he hasn't been getting a lot of touches at all.
He's leading the league in yards per carry outside of Devon Achon. I don't know how to
Achan,
switch
yeah,
Achan now. Outside
yeah,
of him, through a couple of games, he's now the highest with like 11.2 yards per carry. But outside of him, Breece Hall is leading the way, and he's 36th in total rush attempts in the league right now. So that can be a very
yeah.
frustrating thing to see, where you're like, hey, think about where this run game would be if he was even in the top 15 in rush attempts.
Right. So this is where I want to kind of see Breece Hall starting to get 15, 18, 20 carries a game, and if you don't need to overwork him, obviously don't, but that should be the plan is like, hey, Breece Hall's our best player. Let's keep him on the field as much as we can. Um, to address the Michael Carter stuff, I do kind of think that like Jets fans are ready to say, like, let's start getting Michael Carter out there more than Dalvin Cook. I am hesitant to think that that will definitely happen. Just, whether it's correct or not, there is going to be some, hey, we just paid this guy a bunch of money to come play. He's Dalvin Cook. He's a Pro Bowler. Like that all is going to kind of exist, whether these coaches want to admit it or not. Like it just does naturally. Um, and I do also think there's a world like where he ends up starting to look a little better. Like, do I think he'll average 2.5 carries the entire year? Like, or 2.5 yards a carry? Like, no. But again, with that said, it's kind of like if he continues, then you got to just like sunk costs, get over it and move on and start getting Michael Carter. The only thing I want to point out about Michael Carter is like Michael Carter has been a like third down back, like pass catching back, and he's been in on like 2-minute drills. So it makes sense to me that his yards per carry is better because he's getting those opportunities when we're in a pass set, when
Mm-hmm.
you're not stacking the box, things like that.
Yeah, but I would also say that was his best role. Before Breece Hall's injury, he was a good RB2. His rookie season, I guess he had a little bit more of a lead tendency to him, but like I think the RB2 role is great for him. I almost come on the other side with Dalvin, where give me like 3 more weeks of this. I'm ready for Izzy. I'm ready to I don't know if it gets to a certain point where he's that much of a detriment to the offense. I don't want to say that you cut him, but I
No,
don't know if you keep him around. I mean, this is it with
this is
running
one of
backs.
those
This is
things where I don't at all disagree with you like that. And like you say, 3 weeks, it's like, yeah, I mean, fuck yeah, if he continues to not be explosive. But I guess what I'm saying is like we play the Broncos this week, right? And we're about to preview that, and that's going to be all fun and good. And I think both you and I really do think like, hey, this Broncos team isn't as good as this Jets team. We should be able to have a lead, and teams with the lead run the ball a lot. So like, would I be surprised if this week we see Breece Hall for 15 carries for 80 to 100 yards, and then Dalvin Cook has 10 carries for 55 yards? Like that wouldn't shock me. I'm not ready to. I just feel like our offense has been so putrid outside of last game that I'm not ready to like 100% say I'm done with Dalvin Cook. But
fair.
again, it's like it's one of those things where it's like you continue to get more information as he plays, and you need to be willing to pull the plug, sooner rather than later if he continues to hurt your offense. But it's just this is one where like Bryce Huff, I expect to continue to outsnap Carl Lawson. Ruckert, I expect to continue to outsnap Uzama. I'm not certain that this Michael Carter over Dalvin Cook will hold this week.
Oh, okay.
If it does,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll eat my words. But like I would kind of assume that this Jets team is gonna hold on to Breece maybe a little longer than they should, or excuse me, to Dalvin maybe a little longer than they should, because he comes in late, you paid a bunch of money for him, all that stuff. So it'll be something fun to watch.
Definitely. Yeah.
He's definitely been bad this
Dude,
year.
it's
Like
a young man's
definitely.
game. It's a young
Yeah.
man's game.
And
He's
you
especially at that
see
position, man.
you see Breece and Michael, and something they're so good at, and that's been very important with this Jets offensive line, is like making that move to get away from a defender and get those extra yards, where it's like hey, maybe Brees Hall also didn't have great blocking, but he was able to get a stiff arm and bounce outside and get us 8 yards, whereas Dalvin's just losing 2. So it's like, sure, if those things keep up, I'm all for it. I do kind of think there's going to be a curveball thrown in there where all of a sudden Dalvin Cook has like this great game. So we'll see what happens this week. Maybe I'll take Dalvin
I'd
Cook to
love
score a
it.
touchdown.
I'd love it. It'd be fun. I mean, so these numbers, it's so bad.
No,
Because
I
that's the
agree
thing.
with you.
Because well, that's the big thing is last week it was like, oh, everything is working on offense except Alvin Cook.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
dude,
Fair.
I'm gonna give him some props right now because I wanted to mention this before we left. Lakin, 42 pass blocking snaps against the Chiefs, no pressures, no sacks allowed. He's had 2 kind of bounce back weeks since Mekhi moved over to left tackle. So I just want to put it out there because
Big
like we
brain
talked,
take. Was it all Dwayne Brown's fault?
probably didn't look great.
Yeah.
Any other snap distribution qualms that you have? Any guys you want to see on the field more so far the next couple of weeks?
I do think it's worth mentioning, like, you see Gibson, getting a couple touches on trickery type plays, creative plays. And like while Cole was out there a little bit more, still not really out there a lot. I mean, I'm not like losing sleep over Cole not getting snaps. Like if the Jets prefer to have Randall Cobb out there or they prefer to have, Xavier Gibson, like it kind of is what it is. And, over these first couple weeks, as the whole world is like, what is Randall Cobb doing to help this team? What Alan Lazard, like what has this pickup done? Like all of that can also be attributed to just like the putrid offense, the bad quarterback play. It's like, of course, your receivers aren't going to have good numbers when, they get 4 targets in a game or whatever. So that's just something I'm like really interested to keep watching. Like, is Cole going to start getting involved in this offense? Because when, we signed him, the thought was like, hey, this is a guy who, while maybe being the wide receiver 3 or 4, is going to be talented enough to contribute, and has those kind of like weird kind of skill sets to be really fast, to have some trick plays, to do this stuff. But we just haven't really seen it. It hasn't seemed like they've really wanted to get him involved all that much. Obviously, you bring in Rodgers and then you bring in Cobb, that kind of changes things. But to see Gibson out there getting so much run, I do think it's a little interesting to just keep our eye on that wide receiver room and how that's all going to play out.
Definitely, because yeah, Gibson's kind of falling into that same mold where he's getting the trick stuff.
Right.
So it's like one of those two guys.
They're like punt returner guys, right? Where it's like, we want to get this guy the ball in space and see what happens. It's like, that's why you have McCole Hardman. And that's why McCole Hardman with the Chiefs was able to kind of be relevant every once in a while, is because, hey, give him the ball and maybe he'll outrun everybody to the end zone, but with Gibson making the team, with him really looking good, with him out there getting snaps, it's kind of like, is McCole going to be this kind of forgotten piece that, just moves on next year?
Right. Yeah, something to keep an eye on. But as a whole, it seems, at least for now, like I said, with all 3 of these, I loved what we saw against the Chiefs. Show it to me again against the Broncos, where it, continues to pave success. And then I'll be like, all right, the Jets got things on track here.
Yeah, just to throw in my last thoughts, like, this is the first time in a while, if not ever, that we've seen, a Zach Wilson led offense really, be able to be successful consistently throughout the game, and it's like, did we win? No. Were there still mistakes? Yes, that's all fine. But you really were able to see a team where, when it was 3rd and 6 and Zach Wilson drop backs to pass, I'm thinking, hey, we actually might get this first down and convert and keep this drive going. And, a lot of times we did. Whereas, last year, early in this season, we really have seen just like a totally inept offense. So to me, like, this upcoming week is so important because we're seeing, hey, these are things that helped us. And we were able to have an offense that looked like a real offense. How many times did I sit and say, you watch this bad team, you watch this bad team, and they still look like they can move the ball, and that's what the Jets showed us last week was, hey, we are able to get up and down the field. We're able to get the ball into our playmakers' hands. We're able to run plays as a real NFL offense. I want to continue to see that. And I think all of these kind of adjustments that we've seen go hand in hand with the improvements, even from a play calling perspective. Throw that in there too. We saw pass plays on first down. We saw, a ton of pass plays as opposed to just the hope to just run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. So obviously there's going to be adjustments, different game plan, different team. You're not playing the Chiefs every week, but it's really important to me that like we continue to kind of see these things in effect and we continue to see this offense move, because if we'll get into it, but if we
Yeah.
see this team come out flat and just look terrible again, the fan base is going to be up in arms again,
Yeah. You're making the transition easy. Let's head to Denver. Jets flying out west.
Denver.
Denver is favored by 2 points. The over-under is at 43. I made a massive bet on Monday when there's a line that was a little bit different. I'll tell you about it at the end. Massive, massive, massive bet that I placed.
I'm intrigued. Good tease.
So, all right, let's break down this Broncos team. They flat out suck. They are not a good football team. I think they've got the worst defense in football. This morning, they made big news that Randy Gregory, a edge rusher they signed to a 5-year, $70 million deal this past offseason, is going to be cut. They are releasing him. They said there's a chance he gets traded. It'll happen within the next day or two if they can find like a 7th-round pick to give it to. But just Randy Gregory was benched for a younger guy. Or no, he was a healthy scratch 2 weeks ago, benched for a younger guy this past week, and is now just like not going to be on the team anymore, so he'll be somewhere else. Meanwhile, taking a look at the rest of the defense, because this is, I think, the biggest thing that sticks out with Denver is that their defense sucks so much. And this was a unit for the past 2 years. Even you want to talk about that Nathaniel Hackett season, it was kind of like with the Jets, where it was like, they are definitely undoubtedly a top 5 defense. Their offense just can't do anything. Now the defense has completely fallen apart with the new coaching staff. I believe the defensive coordinator, it's not Raheem Morris, is it? Let me check real quick, because I'm not Raheem Mostert, Raheem Morris. He is no, that's the Rams D coordinator. Why can't I get the Broncos?
Vance Joseph.
There we go. I knew it was one of those guys that had been a head coach for a little bit. Vance Joseph, he is coaching a terrible defense right now. They are allowing the most yards in the NFL, most rushing yards. He's got the second highest. They've got the second highest yards per carry allowed, the worst quarterback pressure rate, most yards after the catch allowed. Bad on all accounts. And hey, they haven't been facing great quarterbacks. It's been Jimmy Garoppolo, Sam Howell, Tua, who is the best of that bunch, and then Justin Fields last week, who almost beat them, and if not for squandering a late 14-point lead. The big thing that stands out, obviously Miami ran up 70 points on them. So a lot of these numbers you can be like, okay, if a team puts 70 on you, it skews a little bit.
Touchdowns.
But when you still look at the fact that the Commanders put up 30-plus points, the Bears are putting up 30-plus points, it's not just that Miami put up 70. This is, by all accounts, a bad defense with not a whole lot of great. It's got a couple of great players. Pat Surtain was a really good corner the first couple of years into his career. It's a bad defense. So this is where I think the first part of the conversation comes into, is where we just saw the Jets, they've only faced really good defenses so far this year. Only good defenses. The Bills, the Patriots, the Cowboys, and the Chiefs are all ones that I would consider in the top 10, 12 defenses in the league. And the first 3 weeks, not great offensive output, but even against the Chiefs last week, like we just said all episode and last episode, starting to get things figured out. So when we say that the Jets need to come and prove us something, like this is the silver platter. We've already talked about what we want to see, but how do you think the Jets will perform? Because it's one thing to say, like, we need to see this continued success out of the Jets offense. Do you think we're going to be able to get that out of this against a bad Broncos defense, the first bad defense they faced all year?
I mean, do I think so? Yeah, I guess. Like, I feel like I should think so.
Right.
I'm nervous to think so, because it seems like whatever I think, the opposite happens.
Yeah.
But no, like you really did nail it. And to me, this game is so important in so many different ways. Because, like, number one, you just look like you don't want to be 1-4. You dig yourself a really deep hole, and it's like, if we have this Jets team, right, who with Aaron Rodgers, we all said this is a Super Bowl contender, and then the first few weeks we have Zach Wilson playing like the Zach Wilson of old. and playing like, our offense is not able to score, not able to move the ball, not able to keep the defense off the field. And, people start saying, like, are the Jets, should they tank? Should they go for a quarterback? Like all these things. And in my head, it was always like, if this roster that's supposed to be the Super Bowl contender, can pair that with like, oh, actually, since we don't have a quarterback, we're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. Like that would be shocking to me. So when you look at the Jets versus the Broncos here, like this Broncos team has been bad. And this is the type of game where like there's no reason that the Jets can't go in and really have that like I have arrived performance. Have that like this offense is here to stay. Nathaniel Hackett's able to call a game that's able to put up a lot of points. Zach Wilson's able to keep this consistency going, put 2 games together back to back. There's really no reason that the Jets shouldn't be able to go out and score, 28, 30, 35 points on this team. And, we know what this Jets defense is, and this offense is nothing to write home about, with Russ and the receivers that they have. I think Javante's out. So it'll be a pairing of, Jaleel McLaughlin and Samaje Perine. There's no reason they should be able to run the ball on us at all. So yeah, I mean, do I think we're gonna win? Like, do I think this Jets team is gonna be able to perform? I'm nervous, but yes, I do. Like if they are able to kind of bring over how they were able to play on this most recent Sunday, then there's no reason not to. I mean, the big thing with this Jets team is the offense's inability to score, to move the ball. And we saw them that they were able to do it. They were able to put it together. So against this defense, that lets up 70 to the Dolphins, that lets up 28 against the Bears, 35 against the Commanders. It's like, yeah, I want to go out, and score 3 or 4 touchdowns, like we should be able to dominate this game. Real quick, before I go back to you, I just want to tell a little anecdote. I played D3 football, as some of the listeners know. And when I was a freshman, we started like 0-2 or 0-3. And we played, a couple top, like one was a top 25 teams. The other were just like good players or good teams in the league or whatever. But then we had this game against the team. I think it was like Buff State or like, I don't know, something like that. Some just bad team. And I didn't really know much. I'm a freshman. I'm sitting there saying, okay, we're 0-2, 0-3. This is a bad team as well. But like, what's not to say we're not a bad team? And I remember really clearly before the game, the captains, guys who actually played, I didn't play at all, just to clarify, but they kind of came in and they're like, listen, boys, like this should be a blowout. Like there's no reason this team should be able to hang with us. And I remember kind of being like, we're 0-3. Like, but then we went out and beat them like 50-0, Gotcha. And yeah, if this Jets team wants to be considered a playoff contender, wants to be considered a good team, like the number one sign of a good team is that you beat up on the bad teams, So this game means so much to me because this Broncos team is in the running for the worst team in the league, at least so far. And there's no reason we shouldn't be able to just like have our way with them and just like dominate.
Yeah, the big thing for the offense that I look at outside of the rushing staff, the stats, because yeah, they're the worst rush defense in the league. Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook, Michael Carter, whatever snap, distribution it is, they should all have success against this after facing fantastic front sevens all season. That's the one thing. If you wanted to be frustrated with the rush plan or the lack of rush success, it's like Cowboys front 7, Bills front 7, Chiefs front 7, New England's front 7. Like those are great front sevens. There is nothing here that really scares you. But the big thing to me that I look at with these numbers for the Broncos defense is worst quarterback pressure rate and most yards after the catch allowed. The Jets, the last few weeks, have given Zach Wilson the most time in the league to throw over the last 3 weeks. And if you're going to tell me, well, New England and Dallas.
Sorry, no, yeah, I'm kind of blaming Zach for just like holding the ball. But
he's had a lot of time in the pocket. The offensive line in the past 2 weeks has really held up. And so if you're going to tell me that a defense is coming in here that doesn't get to the quarterback and a team that has been doing a better job of holding onto the ball or keeping their quarterback upright, he should have all day to figure things out here. Now, I don't want him to sit in there forever because that's when things start to get a little bit messy for Zach. I definitely would still like to see the ball throw,
Right.
like get that out and run the offense. But there is nothing on the defense that should scare this Jets offense, especially considering what we saw last week with the play calling and the steady development of this offensive line. This offensive line had a really good game against Kansas City. So I'm with you. To finish the teaser here, I put $500 on the
Jesus.
over 40.5 points, which is now already up to 43. So I think a lot of people are of the same mindset as myself. This released at 40.5 on DraftKings, and I put so much money on it because I don't know in what world this game isn't. And I'll switch to the other side, but you're right. The Jets should be in that 28 plus range. Like it
Yeah.
really should be. If the Bears, as bad as miserable as they've been, if they can go do that, and you say that, they've got a rushing quarterback, so that's another thing for a defense to worry about. Maybe the Jets don't have that necessarily, but still, the Bears are dumps. They've lost 14 straight games, and they went in there and they put up 28 points. The Jets should be in the 30-point range here themselves. I do want to give a little bit of credit to your best friend in the world, Russell Wilson. Ever since week one, he has tightened things up offensively. The numbers specifically, he's averaging 280 yards per game, 64 completion percentage, 7 touchdowns to 2 picks. He had a rough year last year. He had a rough week one. He has been facing not great defenses. Miami has a marginally okay defense. I think we saw Buffalo kind of pick it apart. And he was able to put up points in that game. The Bears have probably one of the other worst defenses in football. And who's the other team that I'm forgetting that they've played so far? I have it right here.
The Raiders.
The Raiders, and the Commanders. Yep. So he had a bad game against the Raiders. The Commanders also do not have a good defense. So I will say, the Jets defense is great. Has it been living up to its top 3 standards? Sometimes not so much. There's, holding the Chiefs to below what they ended up scoring 23 points in that game, below their team average total. That's great. There's only so much you can do against them. And Dallas, you can obviously say things got away from them. But like you said, without a Javonte Williams who didn't practice today as we're recording this on Wednesday, things are trending in a direction for Denver's offense, at least, where you could okay, they could probably put up a few points, but at the same time, the Jets defense is still a great defense. It's one that held, New England to a lone touchdown, that really stifled Buffalo's offense that has been red hot since, like the Bills have been red fucking hot since, week 2, and the Jets did a good job against them. So it should just be an ass kicking.
Yeah.
It really should.
No, it should. And I agree with your take. Like the Broncos offense has definitely looked better than it did last year. And they've been able to kind of get things going. Actually, I think they've scored in the red zone a few times, which they really struggled to do last year.
Yeah.
But with that said, this Jets defense is still so great. We're able to kind of shut down, if you say, Josh Wilson and Patrick Mahomes and these guys, or Josh Allen. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's sure, they have a decent offense, but it's nothing that I don't think we should be able to handle, especially with, not having Javonte, who hasn't been phenomenal, but is a better back than the other guys that they have. But yeah, I mean, I really do look at this game and it's give me Zach Wilson's first 300, yard game. Or maybe he has had one once, but give me his first 3 touchdown game. With that said, give me a game where we rush for 200 yards. To me, this game really is that opportunity to say, are you able to just go out and beat a team for 60 minutes and really say, we are the better team? And, again, we don't want to get overhyped from this Chiefs game because, we still lost and it was just one game and whatever. But we need to see this offense be able to move the ball. And we, should continue to see the defense play well. So, yeah, just like you think, I really do think this is that opportunity for Zach Wilson and this offense to say, hey, we can move the ball, we can score, we can be, at least a league average offense in this league. And I like your over bet. I mean, I always lean under with these Jets games, because we've just continuously had a great defense and had a pretty putrid offense.
Mm-hmm.
But this does kind of feel like this is our opportunity to take a step and really say, like, hey, we can run an offense. And don't forget, Nathaniel Hackett revenge game
We
coming
need to
back into
talk about this.
Denver after Sean Payton has all these comments in the offseason. This game means a lot to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. And to me, like, it is so important that we are able to be successful against this Broncos team.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why I went auto over for this and so heavy on that, is because not only do you think that Nathaniel Hackett wants to put up points for where things went poorly, especially after the comments made by Sean Payton, on the flip side, Sean Payton is one of the brightest offensive minds we've had from a coaching perspective in the history of the NFL. Russell Wilson is still at one point a very talented quarterback. They want this, maybe not as much as Nathaniel Hackett does, but this is going to mean a lot for Russ to go out there after his terrible season, the worst season of his career, with Nathaniel Hackett calling plays, and to say, like, I'm not that. This thing went poorly for both of us, but I am still like a good quarterback in this league, which is why I think Denver will still be able to move the ball. Honestly, it would, let me spaz out real quick. That was really bad. Best case scenario is that this defense just comes out and has Nathaniel Hackett's back and just lays the fucking wood down. But I do believe that Sean Payton and Russell Wilson are a talented duo enough to figure out how to move the ball. The run game isn't that great. The offensive line isn't that great. They do have talented receivers. I think at the very least the Jets will be putting up points, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos also find a way to, put a few scores up on the board.
Yeah, and it all really does lend itself to, like, the Jets are 1-3, the Broncos are 1-3. It's maybe not the most exciting matchup in the world, but at the end of the day, right, and like the storylines of this game are going to write themselves. Like, if the Jets come out and win and their offense looks better than the Broncos, then everyone's going to be like, hey, look at Nathaniel Hackett, look at Zach Wilson, Sean Payton and Russ. And if the Broncos are able to win and they look halfway decent on offense, it'll be a shitstorm for Hackett. So while not being the most like intriguing game on paper, it does have a lot of like intrigue. And, as one of those late 4:00 games where the NFL loves to only have like 2 or 3 games, I think this will draw a lot of attention because of that. Those storylines are definitely going to pick up throughout the week. I'm really intrigued to see, like pregame, like, are Russ and Hackett going to be kind of palling around and catching up? Like, I don't really expect Hackett to be all that cool with Peyton. But with Russ, I mean, he just spent a year with him. You would expect them to kind of like have some kind of rapport. So I'll be interested to see how all that goes down.
And Saleh's not going to be cool with Peyton either. Saleh came pretty quickly and defended his guy. Rodgers came quickly and defended Hackett as well too. You watch the team loves Nathaniel Hackett. They, all things considered, yes, it was a bad coaching season for him last year in Denver, but the team does love him. They're going to go out there and try and put on for this guy, especially because it's something that you don't see too often. You don't see another coach coming out for another man's job and just like bashing him publicly, which only makes me think, because I know Sean Payton's, he's got that little bit of Urban Meyer to him where he's like, if I know that I can fire my team up, like, he's going to find a way to really put an edge under there. I can only imagine what he's saying, behind closed doors this week to that Broncos team. Like, he's going to make sure that they're motivated and ready to come out. Just, do they have the talent? I don't think it matches up with the Jets.
Yeah, no, me neither.
It's going to be a passionate game.
We can dominate this game.
It's going to be a passionate, hard-hitting game.
Definitely. And that's another, I mean, like what you just like usually the head coaches like at least say what up before the game. Like, I'm like, to Sean Payton say like, hey man, I shouldn't have said all that, like, my bad? Or is he kind of, like, because it does feel like it was somewhat Rodgers specific. Like, and also I think he was just kind of trying to cover his ass. Like, hey, we're not going to be very, very good right off the gate. I'm going to put some of that blame on what happened here last year, which is a pussy move. But I'm just imagining like Saleh and Payton like shaking hands before the game, and like, what is that conversation really going to be like?
After I was it Sean Payton? This might have been a while ago. I think I remember him maybe not getting into a fight with a coach after a game, but him having a heated exchange with a divisional coach. Maybe I'm confusing him with somebody else, but like Sean is
Yeah, that shit does happen.
Sean's not the nicest guy in the world. He doesn't have like the cleanest record. He did orchestrate Bountygate a good decade ago. Like he's got some skeletons in the closet. So it'll be interesting to see how they all interact. But I would expect at the very least, like this is going to be a physical game. This is going to be two teams that are really fired up to support their coach. And now it comes down to me, like, who has their locker room more? Has Denver, with how things have gone defensively, are they still bought in all the way that they were at the beginning of the season? The Jets certainly are. I think what we hear from the Jets, defensively, especially after this last game where you see the players coming and surrounding Zach and having his back, like this team is still just as bought in as they were when things were going poorly. So if things are on the upswing now, like I still, early on in that Chiefs game, the defense was giving up. And as soon as they saw that the offense had some life and it was like a score from the Jets offense, that defense came out. I don't know if it was a 3-and-out immediately or if it was a turnover, but there was just energy brought back in defensively where the first few drives, they looked like they weren't even wanting to play.
Well, so, we were able to get that safety. They were able to affect the game positively, get us on the board. Then we were able to score a field goal off that, which you hope's a touchdown, but that's important, dude. And I mean, even the way you're hyping this up, like two teams fighting for their coach, like, goddamn, if the Jets don't win a game like that, where we got fucking Robert Saleh and they got Sean Payton on the other side in his first year there, like, this game to me
means a lot.
Is a must-win game. Like,
means a lot.
And if you go out and lose to the Broncos, it's hard to take you seriously as a team. Like, it's hard to take you seriously as a real playoff contender. It's hard to take you seriously as a real team. What are you going to do against the Eagles next week if you lose to the Broncos?
It's hard to take that Chiefs game seriously at that point. Maybe you just say, well, the Chiefs had an off day. Maybe that's what the storyline becomes if you go out there and you lose a stinker to the Broncos. Maybe it's like, yeah, the Jets offense got clicking. Maybe Kansas City just had an off day. So it's like it really changes the context of a whole lot here where you're right. This is a game that the Jets 1,000% should win.
Yeah. Yeah, I might take the Jets team total over and hammer that.
I mean, what's it at? I mean, if the total is at 43.5
is the implied total. It's with the line at -2 Broncos. So can they score 3 touchdowns? I mean, I fucking hope so.
They
should be able to.
Right?
Yeah. That's my maybe my final thought. I don't know. But I do want to see like another electric game from Zach Wilson. I want to see him able to throw the ball. I want to see them demonstrate trust in him. But with that said, I do really want to see this running game get going because that is going to be so important. And only makes it easier on Zach Wilson if that's the case. But, I'd love this to just be a game where we are just winning the whole time and able to move the ball. Obviously, who wouldn't love that?
And that's my final thought is we have said every week we have kind of been the expectations have almost been flipped of what we thought was going to happen. I expect the Jets to come in and fucking wreck the Broncos. Maybe it's not like point wise, but to just be the better team, like you said, for 60 minutes. That's what I'm expecting. But I also expected them to get their asses handed to them by the Chiefs. I expected them to beat the Patriots the week before.
Yeah. Well, this is
fingers crossed, dude, because a loss to Denver will send us to a spiral much like that Patriots game, maybe even a little bit worse.
No, definitely. And I do think it would be, obviously it depends on how it looks, but whatever. But we can get into game predictions. But my question for you is like, should I start always picking against the Jets? And then maybe I can reverse psychology, like reverse.
They still lost.
Because no, true. Yes, they did still lose. But last week was the like that happened to me last year too. I can't remember what the game was, but I was like, finally, I think I picked the Bills like in the first time we played the Bills and then we beat them, and it was kind of just like, I'm finally going to not pick the Jets. And then they ended up shocking me. And that's what happened last week. And it was awesome. Like I was truly so down. I didn't even really want to watch the game. And the whole preceding up to it, everyone's texting, in all the group chats, like, how are the Chiefs only 7.5-point favorites? Hammer them, all that good stuff. And the Jets come out and shocked me and shocked the world. And, while still losing, played a pretty good game. So I am a little nervous. But with that said, I mean, when I look at this game, like I think the Jets should win 30-10. Like I don't think this Denver Broncos offense should be able to score on us. I don't think they are a top tier offense. And I think that we have the kind of matchup ability to be able to shut them down, you know? And then from an offensive perspective, I really just want to see us continue to be able to move the ball. And I really think we should be able to run the ball a ton, which should take the pressure off of Zach Wilson a little, and hopefully he can kind of continue with what he has done. But like, I don't see any reason why we can't blow this team out. I don't see any reason why we can't have a functioning offense for 60 minutes. So call me stupid. I'm taking the Jets 30 and the Broncos 10.
I'm going to give the Broncos a few more points just because
Are you mad at me
financially it's going to make me happy.
Won't hit?
Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
30-13.
You're putting me at fucking, I'm going to go 35-17. Because the average NFL defense has still put up 17 points or around that range. So, like, to me...
My hot take, I don't think the Broncos are going to score a touchdown.
Well, you picked 10 points.
I changed my mind. 12 points.
Right, 4 field goals. Well, hey, now, I said that the Patriots are going to score 15, and I didn't even take into it. I said they weren't going to score a touchdown, and it was a touchdown, a field goal, and a safety. So, weird things can happen. They get 5 safeties.
It's so wild how just like last week, the entire week, I'm like, I don't even want to watch this game. Like, I mean, obviously I do, but it was just like, this just sucks. Like, and then now I'm like so excited for this week and like think we're going to dominate. So we'll see if I have to eat my words.
Fingers crossed. God,
so what was your prediction? What to
35-17.
Yeah, I would love
5 touchdowns.
Here's things I want. I want to score more than 30.
Yeah.
I want Zach Wilson to have 300 yards.
3 passing touchdowns.
But if I would love that. But if it turns out to be a running the ball game, I'll be fine with that too. But then I want to see like 200 rushing yards. But yeah, I mean, we clearly don't respect this Broncos team. Maybe you do a little more than I do. So we'll see. We'll see what happens this week. But I mean, if this Jets team wants to be taken seriously, we have to be able to look good against the Broncos.
I think they will. Fingers crossed, just a few days away. That will kick us off into the weekend. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69. Same as the YouTube, Teddy at Teddy Hunt Show. I am at Spring Blake with 4 A's. Good luck out there. Let's kick the Broncos fucking teeth in. Fuck Sean Payton. Fuck Russell Wilson. God bless Nathaniel Hackett. And we'll talk to you next week. Peace.